College Football Show. We're back. Me and Wes here to talk everything about all the games, mainly Texas. We broke down every game for you guys, and we kind of nailed it. We picked all 4 games correctly, and kind of pretty accurate on how we thought the games were going to go. Obviously, the Texas game got wild at the end. Most of the game was a bit different than that, and we'll jump into all that. Let's start with Texas. And I know you have a ton to say. I know you broke down the film and watched the game multiple times. I went back and wrote some notes, but I want to you start us off. Take us where you want to go. Let's talk about the game. Obviously, Texas wins it in double overtime. Thriller, the best college football playoff game I've seen ever in terms of like entertainment. Although I didn't fucking enjoy it at all. I was losing my mind the whole game. So the ending was great, but besides that, was not fun for me.
Well, you and I were texting throughout the whole game, and it was like, oh, fuck Quinn. Oh, fuck Sark. Oh, fuck Cam Scattaboo. Like we just were looking for people to blame.
Yes.
But I guess this could go in a million different directions just because of how the game played out. But I think I want to start with let's start with Texas. So Arizona State gets the ball at the beginning of the game. They go down the field, kick a field goal. Texas should have gotten off the field early. There was a
should have been a 3 and out. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a penalty. And then they go down and kick a field goal, whatever. 2 plays, Texas scores, punt return touchdown after they get another 3 and out. And my first thought was, oh boy, the defense is going to be on the field, and back-to-back possessions, a lot. But luckily, Texas has depth. They have a lot of they can rotate guys in and out, so it's not that big of a problem. But I just filed that away. Arizona State ran 100 offensive plays.
To Texas's 60.
Exactly. So that definitely became, thematically kind of the talking point of the game was that it felt like, first of all, Arizona State dominated time of possession. I think they won the turnover margin. Cam Scattaboo played the game. I mean, if you're catching balls, you're running the ball well, and you're throwing touchdown passes, I don't think anybody can complain. But first half, they held them to 39 yards. And so I was like, okay, well, yeah, it's 17-3, and it feels like Texas kind of took their foot off the gas a little bit. But of course, everybody knows how the game played out. Texas had their pretty atypical third quarter lull that bled into the fourth quarter. They allow Arizona State back into the game. It goes into overtime, and then Quinn Ewers makes a play that is not synonymous to, of course, 4th and 5 national championship on the line right here. Vince Young scores. It's not. It doesn't capture the gravity of that moment due to the stakes of the game. Yeah. But Texas fans will forever remember Quinn Ewers for that play. I think that he threw 3 passes in overtime, 2 of which were touchdowns. One was a 2-point conversion, not total, but in 3 plays, he made that happen.
Yeah.
And I'm really happy for the kid. I love Quinn Ewers, the person. I hope that kind of quieted some critics a little bit, and there's no bigger stage to kind of come back and play your old team in Ohio State. But there's something that I want to talk about.
Real quick, one thing I want to mention on that, I thought it was ironic and cool, the sense that last year in the Sugar Bowl, the final play was on the 13-yard line on a 4th down for the season, and he threw the wrong ball. I mean, it was kind of the guy was open, and he threw the wrong ball. And on this play, it was 4th and 13 exactly with the season on the line, the exact same situation. He checked the play. Dillingham talked about in his press conference. He was like, no, Ewers actually, he saw what we were doing. He checked the max protection, and it was a perfect route by Golden and a dime, absolute dime. So I just
Matthew Golden,
that was awesome.
I think that's awesome. I'm glad you said that. It was awesome. And by the way, I think that Matthew Golden is having a very similar impact to this Texas team like Adonai Mitchell. And it just shows the fact that Texas season in and season out is dominating the transfer portal. Let me touch on that real quick.
Yeah.
Quinn Ewers, Andrew Makuba, Matthew Golden, Isaiah Bond, Trey Moore. You have guys, you have transfers making plays all over the field. Hats off to Sark and his staff for being able to properly evaluate these guys. Of course, you have some misses like a Javion Cole or Gavin Holmes.
Sure.
Gavin Holmes is a good player. But I want to touch on something real quick about that game.
Yep.
Quinn Ewers is probably the most highly criticized quarterback of the modern era, and that includes Chris Sims and Major Applewhite. Major Applewhite was more of the beloved. Chris Sims was more of the anointed. And that quarterback controversy, I'll never forgive Mac Brown for, but, not in Texas anymore. But I rewatched that game 3 times. That was about 5 hours of my life gone because I was trying to understand the lulls. When Steve Sarkisian was hired, what's his slogan, Dylan? What is his thing? It's all gas, no brakes.
Right. Yeah.
This motherfucker rides the brakes so damn hard at certain points of the game. And he tries so hard to rely on the defense. Again, I'm going to say it again, reminiscent of Michigan 2022. And yes, you have the ability to do that. But why are you not stepping on people's throats and closing games out?
Dude, I said the exact same thing watching the game. Why can we never beat someone's ass? Every time we get up, you saw it in the A&M game this year. You didn't even see – you kind of saw it in the Georgia SEC championship. Obviously, we weren't winning, but we should have been up by 17. We can never just
Vanderbilt.
end away. Vanderbilt.
Kentucky.
Arkansas. I mean, every game. It's just – you're exactly right.
And Texas typically has been like, well, you know what we're going to do? We're going to ice this game by running the football and just maul – whoever the opposing defense is. And I'm going to tell you why they couldn't run the ball.
Okay, this was all my questions for you was how come all of a sudden we have been able to run the ball on everyone but Georgia, it feels like, and then all of a sudden this Arizona State defense who nobody thought was any good, and I still don't think is any good,
They're not very good.
What happened?
The irony is that defense is filled with Texas transfers. Prince Dorba had the game of his life.
He did.
Xavier Alford was making plays. So if you remember when we came on the podcast the first time and came on the show the first time, we talked a little bit about, well, what's going to happen in the SEC championship game? And I said, well, Texas basically has completely transitioned into an outside zone run team.
I remember that. They
wanted so bad to establish the run through outside zone, stretch run schemes. If you were to look at the offensive line for Texas, albeit without Cameron Williams, it doesn't matter. Trevor Gooseby is going to be a first-round NFL draft pick in his own right here in a couple of years. The weight differential on average between the Texas offensive line and the Arizona State defensive line, which, by the way, ran a shitload of 3-man fronts, is over 35 pounds. At that point, you run the ball between the tackles. I don't care if it's Trey Wisner. Yeah. I don't care if it's Jaden Blue. I don't care if it's Jarrett Gibson. You figure at halftime, he said some shit that pissed me off. Well, we got to figure out how to run the ball.
Yeah, he did say that.
It's like, what do you mean you got to find a run game? You don't find a run game by giving a pep talk to the offensive line or telling running backs, hey, man, holes in the B gap, not the A gap. No, you change it up. You got to change it up. You got to play matchups in the game of football. And don't get me wrong. Hey, Sark knows way more about the game of football than I do. I'm a casual fan that is passionate about the University of Texas and their football team. I'm calling it like I see it. It shouldn't take Quinn Ewers, who has been struggling all season, playing through injury, to all of a sudden live up to basically the 6-star status that he had as the highest rated recruit of all time coming out of high school, to give that performance to slam the door on a mediocre Arizona State team. And I know we're going to probably talk about the targeting call, but that's my 2 cents. A lot of what happened in that game is on Sark. Almost 90% of that is on Sark.
It felt like I agree with you. I feel the same way. I rewatched the game once. I rewatched the end of the game quite a bit. I watched that multiple times.
It's fun to watch.
It's fun to watch the end of it when you know you've won. What I didn't understand, and tell me if I'm wrong here, just because, like I said, I didn't rewatch every play a ton. It felt like they brought pressure quite a bit. And we didn't run the screen game we normally run. That's what it felt like to me. I feel like a lot of times he's one of the best screen play callers in college football, if not the best. And I felt like we got way away. We had that one where it was, the lot of misdirection where there was a fake handoff, a fake screen, and he threw back. It almost got picked. And then there was a great block outside by Gooseby, and we got, I think Wisner picked up like 25. But that's the only one in the back of my mind that I can think of. What am I right? Did we not run a lot of screens, and did they bring a lot of pressure?
You are right. They did bring a lot of pressure. The problem is it was press man pressure. So if it is press man, you don't even have a time to really make a decision if your wide receivers are getting jammed at the line of scrimmage and you can't create separation. And with man pressure, a lot of times it wasn't like the pocket was collapsing on the edges. It was coming right up the middle. And by the way, we all know that the deficiency along the Texas offensive line is, although Jake Majors is a great player, Hayden Conner is a great player, DJ Campbell should be a great player, even though they benched DJ Campbell on the last 4th down drive, and Cole Hudson comes in, gets a false start penalty on his first snap.
I know.
And so it's one of the many just mind-boggling scenarios. But yes, they did run a lot of man pressure, and I think that's why you didn't see a lot of screen plays and a lot of quick throws. RPO, I think that what they should have done is run max protect RPO with one read on the outside, have a running back tied in the flat, or you hand the ball off. But the problem is you can't run RPO like that in the outside zone run game. If you're going to run RPO in that specific situation, it's got to be between the tackles.
Yep. That makes a lot of sense. Let's talk about the officiating. Because look here, and I'm really, really interested to hear your opinion on this, but here, obviously I'm partial, right? Like, I'm a Texas fan, as are you. However, I will say this. It felt like a lot of the game, and they, if you look at the penalties, Texas got called for 10, Arizona State for 6, and that's not including a couple for Texas that were declined. Obviously, there was the DPI on Scattaboo, which I thought could have been called OPI.
Should have been called OPI.
Should have been called OPI.
Question.
And then it's a face mask, so it's a double penalty. Obviously, one was declined, but and then so there's that, right? I felt like a lot early in the game. There are a lot of screenshots I saw on Twitter and on social media of Texas wide receivers getting their jerseys ripped or getting jerseys pulled or getting held. There was not a defensive hold called the entire game, yet in one of the biggest plays in the 2-point conversion, we get called for a hold in the end zone, and they get a second chance at tying the game. Otherwise, who knows if it even goes to overtime. So there's a lot of, I think, that could have gone either way. Even if you look at it, right? I want your opinion on the targeting. Obviously, that's the big controversy. That's all anyone talks about. Nobody talks about the rest of the game, the rest of the officiating, the whole game. It's all about the one call, and they all act like had that call been made, they win the game. Are they in great position and we're in a shit spot? Yes, but we blocked a
below average kicker.
Below average kicker. We blocked a kick earlier, right? Like totally different type of pressure. Look at our kicker. Not that he's good. Missed from 38 to win the game, which is another story that is just.
Bert Auburn sent me into cardiac arrest twice.
He did. I couldn't believe he actually missed this. I thought he was going to make the second one. I wasn't sure about the first. The second, I was like, "There's no way."
By the way, I love Sark, but the whole TV moment where he went out and gave my press talk in front of the camera pissed me off.
Hated it. Said the same thing.
And I love Sark. I love Steve Sarkisian for what he's done for this program. That game was not a defining moment in Steve Sarkisian's career as the head football coach at the University of Texas. But to the officiating. The officiating was poor, period. You mentioned jerseys being pulled on the Ryan Wingo deep ball, couldn't even turn back and find the ball. Yes, officiating across the board was very poor. I'm going to dive right into the targeting call.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
It was targeting.
It was.
Period.
By definition, it was.
Just for the sole fact that it was a defenseless receiver. The end. The end. Head-to-head contact. It doesn't matter if you're leading with the crown of your helmet. If it's a defenseless receiver and you hit him in the head, period. It could be with your face mask. It's just the way the rule is. Is it a terrible rule that penalizes the player, which creates ejections? Yes, the rule is not perfect. It needs to be more, in my opinion, of a judgment type call, which in this case, I think is exactly what happened with the officials. I think they swallowed their whistle because of the no call on the Isaiah Bond deep ball, where the Arizona State player leaves his feet, both feet in the air, launches with his head and shoulder, hits him right in the side of his helmet, ear holes him, lays him out, no call, we're moving on, interception.
Yep.
That's what happened.
No, it is exactly what happened. And my problem with this especially is you hit it perfectly. And it's like, okay, if you look at those two plays, what's the more dangerous play? A guy trying to make a tackle where incidentally, is it targeting? Yes. But incidentally, his face mask and helmet hit the other guy's helmet to helmet. Fine. It's forcible. Yes. The guy got knocked out. He's trying to stop that guy from making a first down. He doesn't do anything you don't want a guy to do. He does it. He makes the tackle.
There was no
and then
intent.
You look at right. And then you look at the other side, and it's like, not only did he launch, not only did he hit him, not only is it textbook targeting the same exact way, but also the ball was already dropped. He's launching. This guy's trying to make a tackle to stop him. And over
they
here,
picked it off. They picked it off. They intercepted the pass.
Off, so why is he going to hit him right there? That's my point. I don't understand.
I think it was a bang play. Like, he's trying to make a play on the ball. The safety comes over, intercepts the pass. By the way, terrible fucking play call. Terrible play call. Terrible ball.
And it was why throw it too? I mean, I'm not. I like two guys. Like, what's the point?
You know what I think it was? I'm going back to Sark here. People might call me crazy, but I'm not fucking crazy. I watched how he did this stuff with Devontae Smith all the time. He wanted Devontae Smith to, I'm not going to say stat pad, but have some success, right? Steve Sarkisian is an empathetic and sympathetic guy. I think that Isaiah Bond was basically a non-factor in the game. He's still hurt. It's very clear. I think he wanted to give Isaiah Bond a shot. He figured, hey, we're up by 2 scores in the fourth quarter. Let's take a shot play. Texas had been finally running the ball effectively. It was a horrific play call.
So bad.
Terrible ball. But yeah, you're right. I mean, the Arizona State player launches. Clearly, he leaves his feet.
Yeah.
He is literally like a missile. He leaves his feet launching like this, hits Isaiah Bond in the head, folds him in half in midair. Cannot believe he got up, by the way.
I know.
Should have been clear targeting, but that's why they swallowed the whistle on the Taft play. All the pundits are talking about Michael Taft. Arizona State should have won the game. Dude, fuck yourself with that assessment. Nobody can say if they would have gotten that, they would have made the field goal. Prime example is Burt Auburn.
Yes. No, that's my biggest issue with it, is seeing guys go on there, and I forgot. Man, I wish I remembered who it was. There was somebody who went on there and said that they were straight robbed and Arizona State should have won. And it was like they would have had the ball on the 40 fucking yard line with a kicker who's maybe good from 35 in. Like, it would have been 50-50 from anything. Outside of 40, I would have said it was like 10%. They had kicking issues. They had open fucking tryouts for kickers in the middle of the season. Okay. Like, they are one of the worst kicking situations. That's why Kenny Dillingham, obviously he's trying to win the game, but he went for it a ton down there. Partially because of that. We blocked one at the end of the first half that was 35 yards. So that is my problem with it. Like, we already hit it, right? Both sides, you could call either one. I'm so glad they didn't call it. I thought they were going to.
Me too. I literally walked out of I went to my mom's house to watch the game.
Yeah.
I got a FaceTime from my best friend who's in South Africa. I'm like, dude, Texas just lost the game. And he's like, no way. The rest of the game, I flipped my phone and was just filming the TV so we could both watch the game. And that's how I lived the end of that football game.
I love it.
It's a nightmare. But hey, man, at the end of the day, Texas gets the win. They move on to the college football semifinals, college football playoff semifinals. I think they're the only team to do so. They're also the first team in FBS that has won every single New Year's Six bowl game.
I saw that. That's awesome.
And so, for those that don't like it, you can go fuck yourself. Respectfully, though.
Respectfully, yeah. With all due respect, go fuck yourself.
Yeah.
No, I think we nailed it perfectly. Quick thoughts, and we'll break down this game later this week. We'll go and do previews. But just quick thoughts. It's funny. You and I were texting, and you said you would make the line 7.5. And I said, and funny enough, I said from a betting perspective, as someone who's been in the betting space for a long time, I'm like, yeah, I think it's going to be 3.5, maybe like 3, maybe 3.5. And I saw it open 4.5, and that thing got bet up to 6.5 in like 5 fucking minutes. I mean, dude, I was shocked because look, I totally get it. I get what the teams looked like. 3 weeks ago, we were ready to fire, not we, but people were ready to fire Ryan Day. Yep. And that line just Wednesday morning, like if Wednesday morning Texas played Ohio State on a neutral field, Ohio State would have been a 1.5, maybe a 2-point favorite.
FanDuel opened with that. FanDuel opened with that weeks ago.
1.5 was the line. And so to me, it's like, okay, I get it, right? Texas did not look good. Ohio State looked as good as they could look. That was like them playing to their potential. But I can't get there. It's like, how do you move a line 5 points based on one game from each team? It's just, we're going to disregard the rest of the season. So I get it. In their current forms, if Texas plays the way they did against Arizona State and Ohio State looks close to what they did against Oregon, we're going to get blown out of the water. I don't think that's going to happen. I think this is going to be a much more competitive game. But just quick thoughts on the matchup. Just give me like quick thoughts on what do you think about Ohio State, Texas?
Well, I think advantage Texas in one regard is the fact they've played Will Howard 3 times. They played him twice at Kansas State. They understand his skill set. Pete Wachowski understands his skill set. The secondary is probably – it's so dramatically improved since the last time they actually had to play against Will Howard, albeit in a Colin Klein offense. I get it. Colin Klein offenses suck. Sorry, NM fans. But I do think that you at least have that in your back pocket if you look at it from the perspective of the Texas defensive coaching staff. But Jeremiah Smith, Emeka Buka, and Carnell Tate pose a really big problem, especially when at this point in the season, Manny Muhammad, for whatever reason, is not playing good football, which is bizarre because he's such a good player. He's so talented. He's been playing phenomenal all season. And so when I look at it, you're probably going to have Jade Barron probably following Emeka Buka all over the field. You're probably going to match up Manny with bracketed coverage being rolled over the top on Jeremiah Smith. And then you got to hope that Jalen Gilbo has the nuts to really cut it up with Carnell Tate.
Yep.
But that's just one element of the Ohio State offense. It's one. Then you have Godzilla and King Kong in the backfield with Travion Henderson and Quinshot Judkins. Fuck, man.
Yep.
The good thing that Texas has for him is the defensive line has been playing really good football. Colin Simmons, Trey Moore, Ethan Burke, guys on the edge have been getting consistent pressure. By the way, record number of pressures against Arizona State and Sam Leavitt. Sam Leavitt is unbelievably mobile and
he's incredibly elusive. Yeah,
he's going to be an NFL player one day.
Yeah, he's great. He's really good.
Will Howard is not going to have that mobility and escapability in the pocket. And if Texas can get pressure on Will Howard, that offensive line is not very good, Dylan.
No, they're actually really bad.
It's a mash unit.
It is. No, I think that is key. I really do. I think you hit it perfectly. I think if Texas gets consistent pressure on Will Howard, you can turn them more into not exactly, but more like what we saw against Michigan, where they had to run the ball a shit ton because Ryan Day will do that. If he thinks his offensive line cannot protect, he will go into a shell and run the ball. They opened it up the last 3. If they open it up and they're protecting and we can't get pressure, it's going to be impossible. But
the scary thing is, even if you make Ohio State a one-dimensional football team, does it matter? You know what I mean? Of course it does.
It does, but not. They're still going to be effective. It's just,
exactly like if they have to run the ball, they're probably going to be able to run the ball. If they have to throw the ball, I don't think it's necessarily the same thing, even though they have all these weapons on the outside. And that's more of an indictment on my belief in Will Howard as a quarterback than it is on the skill guys on the outside.
Yeah.
Right. But I think if Texas can dial up pressure, I think if they can get Will Howard on the ground, it becomes anybody's ball game.
Yep. I also would say this, and you brought up time of possession earlier, and we can move on to the other games here in a second. But if you look at the Arizona State offense in the first half, they had 178 yards on 50 plays, 3.6 yards per play. I mean, they were not effective, and that also includes a 32-yard fake punt from their own 21-yard line.
Jeff Banks.
Oh.
Keep going. I don't even want to get started on the monkey
I know.
king.
But if you remove that fake punt from the first half, they average less than 3 yards per play. But then when you look at the full game metrics, they look better for Arizona State because we wore down. I mean, we were on the field for 38 minutes, right? 38 of the 60 minutes. And like you said, it was from the jump, consistently early. Okay, well, it was a product of our offense playing well, and then our offense starting to not play well, and they just played ball control. They turned the ball over on downs 3 times on 10-play-plus drives. So I think also it's going to be important for our defense to not be burnt out. Like, I don't know if we can have the lulls that we have in these other games and win this one. We have to play like one of our best games. Yeah.
You cannot. And one more point that I'll make, and then we can move on.
Yeah.
Is that I cannot overstate the impact that Quinn Ewers coming into his own at the end of that game, playing with no fear, totally poised, ultimate confidence, making plays when it matters, going into Ohio State. That means a lot.
It does.
I hope that people don't underestimate that fact and think that, wow, Texas just kind of pulled a rabbit out of the hat. Well, yeah, of course they did. But what you also saw was a quarterback throwing for over 300 yards for the first time since Florida, throwing 3 touchdowns, rushing for 1, albeit a bad pick on a stupid-ass play call. But Quinn Ewers coming into form at the end of that game, it's like in college basketball when you have a player. Let's take Max A. Smith from Texas last year, playing really poorly, has one really good game against Kansas State, and then they go beat Texas Tech in Lubbock.
Yep.
Max A. Smith drops like 40.
Yep.
You cannot overstate momentum as a team and also specific to the individual, especially at the quarterback position. I think that's going to pay dividends moving forward.
I agree. And after that pick, he was awesome the rest of the game. It was more than just he was obviously, the overtime throws were incredible, but even the drives to get us down in field goal range a couple times, he made some really, really good throws and led us down the field. And I know at the end of that second drive where we kicked the 38-yard field goal, Sark played for a field goal. I understand that, right? Like, but I think honestly,
it's a 38-yard field goal.
38-yard field goal. I mean, I get it, but I'm just saying, had there been 2 minutes to go, I think we score a touchdown on that drive because Quinn was in such a good rhythm at that point. I felt like nobody was they weren't going to stop us.
I saw a version of Quinn. I was like, holy shit. The last 2 drives of the fourth quarter, he was and it wasn't like it was Quinn's, little flutter balls that he throws that look really nice. It comes out of his hand nice. The ball hangs up in the air, but it always hits him right in the numbers. He was throwing ropes to Matthew Golan, to Gunnar Helm, to Ryan Wingo. Like he looked like a totally different player.
Yeah, he really did.
You can't ask much more from your starting quarterback than, and like, I get it. People love Arch Manning. I like Arch Manning too. But this is the reason why Steve Sarkisian stuck with Quinn Ewers for as long as he did, is for plays and drives just like that one.
And he came through when we needed it the most. And kudos to him. I'm really happy for him. I'm glad. And it's like you said, that's a legendary Texas moment no matter what happens the rest of the way here.
Yeah, his legacy was on the line. His legacy really was on the line.
It really was. Yes, it was. So, and
happy for him.
Win or lose a national title, back-to-back college football playoff semifinals, right? Like, he's done a lot at Texas, no matter what anybody wants to say.
Won a conference championship.
Won a conference championship, played in an SEC title in the first year in the conference. Like, it would be so perfect for us to beat Ohio State and win the national title. But even if we don't, I'm happy that he had that moment.
The season as of right now is a success.
100% it is. 100% it is. Yep. I completely agree. Are we the only team back in the playoff this year? I mean, in the semifinals? Yeah, right?
Yeah, because it was Washington, Georgia, Michigan, and Texas. So, yes.
Yeah.
They're the only team that's made it back-to-back years.
Yep.
And there's only been 2, but.
Yeah, but still, yeah.
Yep.
Okay, let's move on. Let's talk about the game that was played on Friday night, I'm getting my days mixed up. Tuesday night, New Year's Eve. That was Penn State and Boise, and you really broke down this game well. It was kind of like, so we talked about this. We talked about we're going to kind of know early if Boise tries to line up traditionally and run the ball up the middle, they're going to have trouble. And early on, they did, and they had trouble, and Penn State jumped on them 14-0. Ashton Jeanty had fumbled 2 times all year. He fumbled twice in the first half. One was lost on a kind of a weird one where it popped out of his hands and they caught it before they went out of bounds. But Boise gets a break on a Drew Allar fumble inside the 20-yard line when it looks like Penn State's going to go up 21 and it's going to be a blowout. And look, this turned into a football game. This was blowout. And Boise outgained Penn State in this game. They didn't outgain them from a yards per play perspective, but total yards, they outgained them. They hung with them, and there was a key call, and then you take this wherever you want, but there was a key call, and it was the right call. It wasn't that it wasn't a penalty. It just had nothing to do with the play. It was 24-14, very into the third quarter, and Maddox Madsen threw a touchdown from the 20-yard line. They score. It's going to be a 3-point game heading to the fourth quarter, and all of a sudden there's a flag down. It's illegal hands to the face, which in college is a 15-yard penalty, which I think is crazy. And
it is crazy.
It's crazy. Like, that changed the whole game right there. That one call, it's pushed back 15 yards. 2 plays later, on the first play of the fourth quarter, he throws a pick, and that's it. Penn State goes and scores, and they go up 17. And it went from a 3-point game that could go either way to game over. But it was a good game. I was not impressed with Penn State. Were you at all? What did you think of the game?
I was impressed with Keytron Allen.
Oh, he was great. I mean, the running game was awesome. Sure, yes.
I'm so excited to talk about Penn State and Notre Dame because it's just going to be clash of the Titans in the backfield as long as Jeremiah Love comes into that game healthy. But yeah, when we broke it down this game prior, I was saying that if I was Boise State, I'd be throwing a lot of balls behind the line of scrimmage, get Maddox Madsen easy completions, get your skill guys the ball in space, and didn't really do that, right? They tried to ride the Ashton Jeanty train. He fumbles twice. When I look at this, when I extrapolate the game, it kind of just unfolded in a way where you feel like, well, man, the Boise State coaching staff did not do enough to put its players in a position for success. And yes, I understand a huge part of that. Over 70% of that is Ashton Jeanty. But Maddox Madsen showed up and played grown-up big boy football. And I thought he played really, really well considering the circumstance that Boise State couldn't run the football. Yeah. And on that last drive that you're talking about where Maddox Madsen throws that pick, he also threw like 6 straight completions just to get them down the field. And I thought he was playing really well, but as soon as he threw that ball, I said, oh no, that's the game. Only because if you're Maddox Madsen, you're not pushing the ball over 20 yards down the field. Like, you're just not supposed to do that in that situation. You just take the easy completions, try to get it to the sticks, make it down a distance where maybe you can get Ashton Jeanty the ball and he can make something happen. But Ashton Jeanty never was able to get to the second level without contact. But I tell you what, he made a couple of runs where he was carrying for it. He was bouncing off tackles, 4 or 5 guys. Personally, it reminded me a lot of a guy like Bijan Robinson, where he just creates, he's like a puff of smoke, creates something out of nothing. But, you know, I felt bad for Boise State, but it kind of unraveled the way that we all expected that Penn State would eventually pull away. Our prediction was that it would be a close game until Penn State eventually wins. And Drew Allar still sucks at football.
I know. What was he, like 13-26 or something? I mean, it was just, I don't know.
You know, he sometimes makes these throws where you go, wow. Like his first 2 touchdown throws, you were like, whoa, that ball in the back and the corner of the end zone by the back pylon. NFL throw. NFL throw. He's got a cannon. He's super mobile. He's underrated mobile. And like I said, Riley Leonard reminds me of Haynes King and Drew Allar kind of meshed into one player. I can't wait to watch this game. It's going to be super fun. But yeah, I mean, as far as just overall thoughts, it was a good game. Boise State played really well. I hope they get into like a P4 conference eventually one day. Like they would play really well in the Big 12, something like that, which I know is not considered Power 4 right now, but or maybe even the ACC. Like I think that they can make some noise in the ACC. But yeah, good game. I enjoyed watching it, and I'm looking forward to the game next week.
Yeah, it was a fun game to watch. The score wasn't indicative of how that game went. It was much closer than the score indicated. But yeah, I mean, you hit it everywhere. I think Madsen, like you said, in my opinion, you know, obviously he threw 3 picks, but they were all, I believe, all in the 4th or at least late third. Yeah. So look, if you can't run the ball, he's not the type of guy you expect to keep you in a game throwing the ball.
I think one was late third quarter, but yeah.
Yeah, late third into the 4th.
Same stuff.
Same stuff. And so, yeah, I mean, I don't think Allar played great. I don't think Penn State played great. But again, we talked about this on the show. Boise's horrific tackling. They were like one of the worst tackling teams.
Keatron Allen on that play where they called the flag. They called the
oh my
penalty,
gosh, where it came back.
I remember texting you being like, oh boy. I mean, Keatron Allen's a special player. He's 235 pounds. You compliment him with a guy like Nick Singleton. It's a better combination of Trey Weiser and Jaden Blue, except that there's no power element to that run game, right? And so like Keatron Allen and Nick Singleton, man, they're fun to watch, and they are a formidable backfield.
So I know we'll touch on Ohio State too, but I want to touch on who they're going to play, which is Notre Dame. Georgia obviously got rescheduled. We watched it yesterday. Thoughts on that game? Notre Dame, weirdly enough, kind of similar in the sense that I know Notre Dame was the better team. I'm not saying they weren't. They were the better team. They deserved to win. Obviously, Georgia had a backup quarterback in there. We thought that he was going to be overwhelmed. He looked okay. The offensive line did not great, so he didn't have a ton of time to throw. Receivers, I mean, Dylan Bell, that drop was just, that it was bad. It was real bad. Like that's like a drop you just can't make at that level. But regardless, it was a close game in terms of the metrics. But you had a really, really poor decision, in my opinion, from Kirby Smart. It's 6-3. Go to halftime, and he drops him back to throw. I think it was a left tackle got blown by and blindsided him. It's a fumble, and Notre Dame scores on the next play. That was like right there was probably the game. And then you come out in the beginning of the third quarter and return the kick for a touchdown. I was like, okay, this is over real quick. Georgia never had a shot after that.
It reminded me of the sack that Carson Beck took, where he tore his UCL joint. And it looked like the exact same play on the throwing arm. I thought Gunnar Stockton was going to be hurt and not come back into the game. He got up and walked out the field. But for someone as seasoned as Kirby Smart, what a bone. Like Saban would never, right?
Nope.
Sark might. Now the thing is about that game is that Notre Dame's defense reminds me of like the Will Muschamp defenses early on at Texas and at South Carolina, where teams would get a first down and you'd be like, the fuck's going on? How are teams getting first downs? That defense is elite. I really hope that Xavier Watts is healthy going into that game. But I'm sorry, I don't see a way Penn State wins this game.
I don't either, honestly.
At all. I think that, especially with the way that Riley Leonard played, he adds an additional running element to that offense. You already have guys like Price and Jeremiah Love, and you have guys on the outside that were making plays. I just think that Marcus Freeman's also a better head coach than James Franklin.
Oh, he is.
And he had some amazing chess moves in that game, starting with the mass substitution on the punt.
That was great.
Oh my gosh. Like if it came to somebody who's going to win the big game, I'm not picking James Franklin and Drew Aller.
No,
never.
Definitely not. Never. And you look at Penn State, and obviously we'll deep dive this more later in the week, but you look at Penn State, it's like, okay, who have they beaten this year still? Yeah, I understand that they got in as the 6th seed or whatever, but even in the playoff, they got SMU at home in probably the most advantageous position in cold weather against a Texas team who had never played in those conditions, who had never been in the playoff before or any type of game like that.
Yeah, people were saying like Texas got the luckiest draw. I would have taken Penn State's road 10 times out of 10, man. 10 times out of 10. They would have avoided Ohio State, Oregon. They would have gotten – I mean, granted, Texas would have smashed SMU. They would have smashed, and I mean smashed, Boise State.
Yes, Boise State would have been – it would have been – that's a way easier path than Arizona State and Clemson. A conference champion from a Power 4.
Exactly.
Now. Completely different than a Boise State conference champion.
Yeah.
Completely different.
And don't get me wrong. I know there's no transitive property in college football, but the one thing that I always think about when I think of Penn State is the Bowling Green game at the beginning of the year, where Bowling Green going into the third quarter is winning the football game, and they're in the 30s. And Penn State had to, I think, score 40 plus to win that game on the back of Drew Aller. They couldn't run the ball. I don't see it. I don't see the path to win. I like Penn State personally, like I like their team. I think they have a great defense. I love the running backs. I want Drew Aller to be good because he has all the tools that NFL scouts love. And they got that number 5 on the outside is he is so fast and gets open. He reminds me of Xavier Worthy, where he's open all the time, and you have a quarterback that just can't get into football. You know what I mean? I've never seen a player more open in my life than Xavier Worthy and this kid from Penn State. I forget his name for whatever reason, but yeah, man, I don't see a path to victory for Penn State at all. I think that Notre Dame wants it more. I think they want it more for Marcus Freeman than they want it for themselves. They love their head coach.
I agree, and I think he is a really good motivator, and I think they really like. I agree. I think he's very, very likable, and it's been a heck of a turnaround. When I watched them lose to NIU earlier in this year, I was like, this team fucking sucks, and it's been a heck of a turnaround. I know they didn't play a ton of good teams in the regular season, but they demolished everybody they did play, and they've looked phenomenal so far in the playoff.
A big key to that game is going to be the health of the Notre Dame secondary.
I was about to say the same thing. Yes. I mean,
if they lose one guy,
they only have 3 scholarship corners on the roster. Obviously, their star safety went down in that game, and then they lost Riley Mills in the center of the defense earlier in the Indiana game. So they already have some guys. I forgot somebody else went down on the D line in the game too. I think he was okay.
Starting defensive tackle. Yeah.
So it's like they just aren't super deep, and I'm that would be the only way I could see Penn State having a shot here is if some injuries happen early in the game and they're very depleted and Penn State gets a lead, maybe. But I agree. I like Notre Dame.
If they can run the football, they can win the game, but they're not going to be able to run the football.
I don't think so either. Yeah, I don't think so either.
It is, especially as long as Xavier Watts is healthy. I know that I think he was dealing with a shoulder in the middle of that game, like in the fourth quarter. And I remember the sideline reporter was talking about, he was in the medical tent or whatever. I'm sure he's going to be healthy. I'm sure he's going to be fine. And plus, Riley Leonard played phenomenal against Georgia.
He actually that's like the best game he's played in a long time.
Yeah, made really good throws. Ran the ball extremely effectively. You and I were talking during the game. We were like, why the hell is Notre Dame not running the ball?
Yeah, exactly.
But then Riley Leonard was having success throwing the ball. So it's now Georgia's in a position where Notre Dame's not operating in a phone booth, and it kind of just derailed the Georgia defensive game plan. So
they could not get a stop late to get the ball back. I mean, after that jump off sides, it just felt like it'd be like 7 or 8 yards on first down, and then they're having to get a stop in for 3 yards in 2 plays every single series. Okay, last one. It was the least entertaining. It was what we thought was going to be the best game, and ended up being the worst game.
Yeah,
34-0. It was shocking. I mean, it really was. I don't know how else to put it. I was shocked when I was watching what transpired. It almost felt like we were watching and we were like, did Oregon quit? Or is Ohio State this fucking good? It was hard to tell because it was such an ass whooping for the first, I guess, 19, 20 minutes. Oregon scored at the very end of the second quarter to make it 34-8 going into halftime. And it was like, I mean, nobody.
Well, then they got the ball back and they scored again. And I was like, okay, Oregon.
I thought maybe at that point. And then I think I want to say they might have even gotten another stop and gotten the ball back. And then they stalled out. Yeah, stalled out 3 and out. And it was like they had to punt. It was like 4th and 20. They had no option. And that was from that point on, it was game over. But they couldn't stop Jeremiah Smith. What did he have? 178 yards and 2 touchdowns.
Yeah.
They made Will Howard look really good. And like we said we picked Ohio State. Obviously, we thought it was going to be a better game, but I couldn't get that Penn State performance out of my head from Oregon's defense, where Penn State put up 500+ yards of total offense. I was like, I can't get that out of my mind. That's why I'm taking Ohio State. Even though on the bracket I initially had picked Oregon, and when we broke it down, I flipped to Ohio State. So, any thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I mean, number one was in the first matchup in Autzen, I don't think that Ohio State sacked Dylan Gabriel, and Dylan Gabriel in this game was sacked 8 times. You're not going to win football games if you're getting sacked a million times, right? That Ohio State defensive line is legit.
Yeah.
I think that after they went up, what was it, 24-0? I was like, because I tuned into the game late and then rewound it and started watching it to calm the nerves and to make sure I didn't go have a stroke from the game prior. But at 24-0, it really did look like Oregon was like everybody except for Jabbar Muhammad on the defense was like walking around and running like almost like they were in quicksand. Like it was so bizarre.
It was so weird.
But Riley Leonard, not Riley Leonard, Will Howard, Freudian slip. Will Howard, he throws a good deep ball, man, and I think that Chip Kelly does a really good job of. I think that a fork could do a really good job of getting those skill guys in a good position to be successful. But yeah, I personally just think that Ohio State was just coming into form at the wrong time for Oregon. Oregon had a month off, coming off of a bye, not a recipe for success. Ohio State played a tough Tennessee game. A tough Tennessee team, albeit, they beat them. They dominated Tennessee. Yeah. But Tennessee was a really good, quote-unquote, tune-up game going into that matchup in Pasadena, which was essentially like an Oregon home game, if you think about it.
It really was.
But Ohio State traveled really well. I'm pretty sure they probably had the majority of their fan base in attendance in comparison.
As they always do, yeah.
Ohio State fans are the worst.
They really are.
They're the worst. They're worse than Aggies. But
I don't know about that one, but they're pretty bad.
I've heard some stories about Ohio State fans from people that went to that 05 game in Columbus when Vince Young hit Lima Swede in the back of the end zone. I heard some. So I'll tell you off the air some of these stories. It was crazy. I heard that Ohio State fans were like talking shit to children over this past weekend. Yeah, like an Oregon kid was wearing a jersey, and like Ohio State fan like walked up to him and like gave him the double finger, like screaming at him. But Ohio State's really good, man. I think at the end of the day, they were a better prepared football team. I think Dan Lanning got caught with his pants down, to be honest. I think that he had no game plan.
He really didn't. I watched his press conference after the game, and it was baffling. It felt to me like he expected to lose. It was so weird.
Yes.
Like, I don't know. I was like, what? It just was the most robotic. Like, Ohio State's just that good. Like, what are you talking about? I don't know. It was so odd. If you have time to watch that, like, it was so.
I watched it.
Oh yeah, so it was just so. It was like very robotic and like it didn't matter to him. Like, okay, yeah, like we lost, we're moving on now. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Like, you're the number one seed, you're undefeated, and you lose like that. That is shocking. And he just seemed like, like whatever.
It was pretty surreal watching it. And we have to start thinking about, and by the way, I heard that all credit goes to Jeff Ketchum at orangebloods.com that kind of put this thought into my head, but we need to start looking at Oregon. Like, if you don't win a national championship, because you never have, if you don't win a national championship, like, I don't really care what you do during the regular season or albeit in the playoff, right? Especially with a guy like Dan Lanning, where they have a top 3 most expensive roster from an NIL perspective in college football. Yes, you bring in Dalen Gabriel, you bring in Evan Stewart. Like, I'm sorry. Oh, by the way, the Latham ransom hit on Jordan James, targeting, not called. I look at that roster top to bottom, and I'm like, they're not as good as Ohio State just from a talent perspective, but that's a damn good roster with a really good quarterback that can carve you up if you give him time. Well, he had no time to throw the football. But from an offensive game plan perspective, I was so lost in what the hell Oregon was trying to do offensively. No downfield shots, no balls to the perimeter to try to get guys in space. Couldn't establish the run game at all. It reminded me of like Georgia, Texas, and Austin.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Where Quinn Ewers gets sacked a million times and can't run the football. You look up, it's 20-0 at halftime. Like, I don't know. They deserve to lose a game. I'm just not really a big believer in Oregon anymore until they do something of substance when it comes to the big game when everything is on the line.
Yeah, no, I agree. It was even more shocking because the way the first game went, because they did all of those things and they moved the ball extremely well and put up 30+ points. So it was that's what was so shocking to me. You know, it's like, what happened? What was the difference? There's no home field isn't that big of a deal. I mean, it matters, but it's not like that big of a deal. I don't know. That was shocking.
And if I remember correctly, like Jeremiah Smith played well in that game, albeit at the beginning of the season, but he didn't really like dominate that football game.
No, he did not. He did not.
That was that whole game felt like the the Travion Henderson, Quinshon Judkins, Carnell Tate, and Emeka Egbuka show.
Yep.
And I don't know. Again, I'm so baffled by the Dan Lanning lack of game planning or whatever the fuck I watched. I don't know. I don't know what I watched.
Yeah, I don't know either.
But yeah, I mean, honestly, it was a debauchery from a coaching perspective on that by that staff. And yeah, Dan Lanning keeps on having a couple seasons where they go in, I mean, albeit he's going to start getting treated like Ryan Day, which
he should.
Yeah, I mean, especially now that he went undefeated going into the college football quarterfinals, or semifinals. If you are not winning national championships or at least reaching a college football semifinal, there's something wrong, right? And I'm not going to say there's something wrong with the Oregon football program because they're uber successful. They do a really good job recruiting. I wish they'd get the fuck out of the state of Texas recruiting wise. I'll never forgive them from taking Decory Moore away from me. But yeah, man, I don't know. But he's going to eventually be held in that same vein as a guy like Ryan Day.
Yeah, I mean, it's like you look at it similar, right? Like last year, they play Washington, big game, regular season. They lose. They come back. They're a 10-point favorite against the same Washington team in the Pac-12 championship to go to the playoff, and they lose that game again. Like it feels like every time there's a game where it's a pick 'em or they're a favorite and they're supposed to win, or it's a coin flip that he does not come through. And I feel like a lot of people were anointing him earlier in the year after they beat Ohio State. Now I was like, I don't quite see it yet. Like I don't know.
I watched them barely beat Idaho at home.
I know. I remember that was they very well could have lost that game. I mean, could have lost.
They should have lost that game. When I was watching that game last year, and that was when Oregon still had Tez Johnson, had Bucky Irving, Bo Nix. Like you could argue they were even better, and they got manhandled by Washington. Yep. I know it was a close game, but Washington like thoroughly dominated that football game.
Yep.
And it's like, well, yeah, Dan Lanning's a great regular season coach. Show me the postseason. Show me the conference championships. Although they won the Big Ten this year, it just I don't know. It feels weird.
No, I completely agree. I'll close with this last question for you. Any problem with the fact that when I know we kind of touch on the system of the playoffs, but we're not gonna get Ohio State's the 8 seed, right?
Yeah.
Texas is probably the only team left who legitimately you can make an argument would have been in the playoff if it was a 4-team playoff, right?
Right.
So it's like any problem with the fact that it feels more, and I'm not saying I have a problem with this, I'm just curious your thoughts. It almost feels more like college basketball, and I know UConn has been the best team and won the last couple of years, but generally it's the team that gets the hottest, that's the healthiest, that has the best matchups and ends up making a run. It's not usually the best team. And you think about it, like, is Ohio State the most talented team? Yes, but over the course of the regular season, they were not one of the 4 best or 5 best. They lost to Michigan, right? They lost to Oregon, but because of the 12-team playoff, they are now an overwhelming favorite to win the national title. Understandably so, they're super talented. Any issue with that? Like, do you like that we're the system in the sense that, yes, we get more games, but it gives teams like that who maybe aren't the best teams all year a chance to just get hot late and win it? Just any thoughts on that?
Do I like the system? No. Do I have a better alternative? Not really. I think that if I were to do it, I would do it similar to like the NFL, right? Because I feel like that the NFL does a really good job in terms of setting matchups through the wild card and all that stuff. You win your division. Like I think that would be a better alternative because there's no reason why Oregon goes undefeated in the regular season, wins their conference, and then they open with Ohio State in the second round.
Couldn't agree more.
Like that's preposterous.
And Penn State gets Boise State in the second round. Come on.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, and they get the runner-up for the ACC in the first round, right? Yeah. I think, especially because this system has so much opportunity to give us some really incredible matchups in legendary venues. Like, how cool would it have been to see, like, George? I don't know. Like, let's say like Tennessee come to Austin, or
right.
you know what I mean? Like there, or let's talk about like, I guess like an Alabama going to Notre Dame or something like that. Like there's incredible venues, incredible pageantry, unbelievable tradition across the college football landscape. And I feel like as it stands today, albeit a lot of it had to do with the results of the season, but I feel like that it robbed at least the college football fandom community, the audience who consumes and loves the sport so much like we do, from like really, really cool, memorable matchups that would have mattered, right? Because it feels like that the games didn't really matter through the first round.
That's exactly right. They didn't matter, and we knew who was going to win, and they did. I hope that and I don't know if they'll do this. My hope is that I'm okay with giving automatic bids to teams who win their conferences. That's fine. I like maybe having one group of 5 team in, just because that if 12 teams, like that would be, it's fair to have one of them get a shot. But the automatic buys for the conference champions to me should go away. And I would, in my opinion, kind of like what you're saying with the NFL, I would reseed. I would have a true seeding of the 12 and reseed. That way the teams who win benefit the most, because I completely agree. There is, I think it's, there a lot of people want to talk about, it's the rust from the buys. I think it's more the system that was created. Like Oregon having to play Ohio State, that is more of an issue than Oregon being off for that week.
Yeah.
Arizona State and Boise being double-digit underdogs each, not like, it has nothing to do with the fact that they took time off. They shouldn't have had the bye. They probably would not be in that round had they played.
They should have played each other.
They should have played each other. Exactly.
And like, and I think that the buys and like the long time off and knocking off the rust, I think it goes hand in hand, to be honest with you, because like Penn State playing SMU and then going, sorry, not Penn State. What game am I thinking of? Ohio State being able to play Tennessee prior to playing Oregon. Like that feels advantageous to Ohio State. Even maybe that's because hindsight is 2020. But I think that we all knew that Ohio State was going to win that game.
Yeah,
regardless of all the stupid shit talking shirts off that Tennessee pulled. Right.
Yeah.
I think that everybody knew Ohio State was going to win that game, and it made Ohio State a little bit more battle tested going into Oregon.
Some confidence.
But then again, also it makes me think about Oregon. Oh my God, no excuse having a month off going into that game without having any fucking idea how to game plan.
I agree with that.
And so I think they go hand in hand, to be honest with you. But I think a reseed system would be much better. And I think that there needs to be more of like a metric system similar to college basketball that takes into account point differential and matchups and strength of schedule. I mean, we're kind of teetering on the brink of, well, that's the BCS. Well, maybe you integrate the best parts of the BCS into the college football playoff, so that way there can be substance behind some of the decision making, rather than just having a group of old guys that get together that come from the BCS background making arbitrary decisions, like the guy last year who said, well, the reason why I picked Oregon to be the number whatever seed was because Bo Nix's completion percentage was like 75. like fuck that. I don't want to hear that shit.
I agree.
You know what I mean? So I think that there should be some more, like there needs to be more standardization through the process when you select these teams that has more data as its backing.
I completely agree. It was like the argument last year with like before when they were going into the Pac-12 title, I didn't understand how Oregon was ranked above. It was Oregon. How was Oregon ranked above Texas going into that?
Bo Nix completion percentage.
Exactly. It was like a Bo Nix pipe train. Like seriously, like I'm like, how are they determining this? So I completely agree. Like I do think like they have well, they used to use the RPI. What is it? The net? Is it the net rankings now? I think.
Yep.
And they have where quad 1 wins, quad 2 wins, quad 3 wins, quad 4 wins. So I agree. They need some sort of system, because it would at least lend itself to having more of a less subjectiveness to the selection process, where we're just picking and choosing what we're calling important.
Kind of like, I'm sorry to say, but like you need to like go find some math wizard or some data analyst, like put this thing together, so that way you take the human element out of the process, because like having people that could inherently have bias, which, by the way, moving forward is going to negatively impact the SEC after this season because there was such a poor showing through the playoff by the SEC, and the fact that a newcomer in the conference is the only remaining team in the college football playoff semifinals, like that. But that shouldn't even be a topic of discussion or a possibility, right? And so I think you need to do whatever you can do to take the human element out of it and the inherent bias out of it, because people right now are screaming from the rooftops, oh, look how terrible the SEC is with Texas is the only team that made it, blah, blah, blah. Like, I don't know. It's a lot of give and take. I just don't know if I have a better alternative at this point.
Yeah, I would agree. It's kind of an interesting spot. I'm interested to see where this goes. I wonder if they expand. I wonder if they restructure this playoff next year, but at least we're getting more games, and it's been fun to watch, if nothing else, and to talk about, especially. So we got some good matchups coming up. That'll wrap us up for today. We're going to be back to break down some of these games later in the week, and hope you guys enjoyed it. I'll put Wes into my Twitters below, or I guess X now.
We talk a lot of shit on Twitter, dude. You and me both talk a lot of shit on Twitter.
Exactly. It's fun.
I got into a Notre Dame fan's ass on a reply that you made because he was saying some horrible shit, and I was like, "Aren't you supposed to love Jesus?" we
posted something about it, and I just turned my notifications off when they go like that because there was like 400 responses on it. And I was like, I'm just gonna get more angry and like say something I shouldn't say. So I just turned responses off, and it's like, whatever, you could be mean to me, I don't care.
It's fun, man. If you guys want to show, just pop into me and Dylan's Twitter, give us a follow. We talk shit to everybody.
It's fun. It's a blast. I'll put the Twitters below. But thank you guys for joining us. Make sure if you're new to the channel, like and subscribe. And we'll catch you guys later in the week for some breakdowns. Thanks.